Just do your job well and you'll be fine. Because when Ed goes, Jimmy's going to make me news director.
That's the camera. When the red light goes on, that means that the camera is about...
I know what I'm doing. Just cue me and then stick a sock in it.
This is Two J's in a Pod. I'm Mary Ellen Murphy from WGHN Radio.
And I'm Sarah Leach from the Ottawa News Network.
So good to see you. I have to say, before we get rolling here, I have to say this. You are the best road trip partner ever. All right, hi, Dirk. How you doing?
Well, I'm just sitting here just listening in.
He doesn't want to talk into that microphone.
I know. He's so shy.
Here's Sarah. This is what it's like when you're on a road trip with Sarah, because I drove the whole way, right? Mary Ellen, you got to get into that right lane to get on that part of the expressway. I would say it like, you need to get over now. Everything I needed to do was in a calm. You're just the best road trip. We didn't even turn the radio on once.
I know.
We talked so much, and then I drop her off at a hotel near Detroit Metro Airport, and I say to her, okay, just so you know, there's no newspapers at Disney, and they don't sell gum there, and they don't sell gum at Disney because people take the gum out of their mouth and they put it on they put it everywhere, so they're picking up gum everywhere. They don't sell newspapers because they want you to be in a fantasy land.
Right.
They want you to feel like
it's very immersive.
Yes. So how was Disney?
It was good. It's not my first time going ever. I went as a kid. When I was 6. I don't remember a lot about it, but going as a mom is a completely different perspective because you're constantly like trying to figure out who wants to go on which rides. And as you get older, I'm in my late 40s and I love a good roller coaster.
Yeah.
Can't handle them as well as I used to.
I know.
I was like, what is happening right now? And I have one daredevil child who is 9 who wants to be in the front row, and she would dangle from a harness if you would let her.
Wow.
And she wants to go on every single power ride. And I'll tell you, it was I felt pretty rough afterward. But unfortunately we had illness strike midway through, and one of my kiddos, was sick for one full day and missed a day at the park. So that was hard. But
that's the worst.
But remember that parking story that you told me about when you went for your checkup and you couldn't find your car?
Yeah. At Lemon Holton.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So when we got home.
Oh no!
It's Friday. It is 11 o'clock at night.
Oh no!
And we have been traveling all day, and I've got 3 kids and 2 grandparents, so everything is fine. And we go to get out of the shuttle parking lot, and we can't find the parking voucher. And my aunt says to me, well, I gave it to you, when we parked the car. And I said, well, why didn't you leave it in the car? And she said, well, I was, worried that maybe your car might get stolen or something like that. And so I had put it in my purse. I have a cloth purse. Yeah. And I don't know if you know Disney, but they have things with water.
I know.
Kind of a lot. And we got hosed pretty good on a couple of those rides. And that voucher was just gone. Well, they wouldn't let us out of the parking lot.
You got to be kidding me.
So then I said, do we live here now? Like, should I start planning a future? Like,
Oh, my gosh.
So she had to get out of the car, into a shuttle, go back to the hotel that we stayed at before we left for the trip to get a new voucher issued. And then that was a whole ordeal. So by the time we got out of the parking lot, it's like midnight,
my gosh.
and we're leaving, and I'm trying to get onto the highway, and then I hear from the back seat my aunt say, "Do you mind turning on the Tigers game?" And I did like a Linda Blair from like my whole like 360-degree neck turn, and I was like, "Are we doing this right now?"
Oh my God. I'm so sorry.
It was sort of the chef's kiss, because there's always a funny story at the end of it. It's just, we can laugh about it.
No.
It's good to be home is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, no. There is always a story about the end of the trip, isn't there?
Oh, yeah. Oh, and then I hit the pylon that is next to the window, that drive-through window where you give the voucher.
Yeah.
My mirror was a little too close to it, so it knocked it in, and I just blurted out a very aggressive expletive.
That's okay.
And it turned out to be fine, but I thought that I broke my mirror, and I was just
Well,
like...
you've seen my mirror. It's taped up because I did the same.
I was like, I'm going to have to do what Mary Ellen did. This is just perfect.
I know. In fact, I visited a friend that I hadn't seen in a really long time when on this little trip that we did, and he was like, "You got to do something about your mirror. Don't you want your car to look nice?" And I'm like, "I'm in radio. Radio people have the trashiest vehicles. We don't care about our car. I don't care." Okay, so I'm happy to have you back.
Yes.
Do you have Moss derangement syndrome?
I'm sure that he thinks that I do.
So you heard all that.
I did, yeah. So I was briefly ill, not nearly as bad as my son. So then
Right.
I had nothing to do on Thursday night. So I watched the 7 hours worth of committee
Good
meetings. Lord. Yeah, really interesting conversations happening at the county level where we're discussing whether or not, because Commissioner Moss sent the letter to GVSU asking them to rescind their DEI policies, and this is like the
Allison followed suit,
concealed weapon scenario and all that stuff. So Allison Miedema sent one, and then Sylvia Rohde sent one.
Right.
And we're talking about it, and so I think that the current majority on the board is like, listen, we can't have people just kind of going rogue and doing whatever they want and leveraging the county letterhead and to do it.
Right.
I think that this is a problematic conversation, though, because I remember when I was the editor at the Sentinel, I got a letter to the editor from then Mayor Nancy DeBoer, although she didn't identify herself as Mayor DeBoer. And this is when we were doing that proposition, whatever number it was, to legalize marijuana in the state. And she was very anti-pot.
Right, because people jump out of windows and stuff.
Yes,
Yeah.
so I've heard. And so she sent a joint letter with whoever was the mayor of Grand Haven at the time. I can't remember which person that was. And they just signed their names. So I put that they were the respective mayors of the cities. And she got very upset with me. And she said, I was writing that as a private citizen. And I said, yeah, but you're the mayor.
Right.
And everyone knows that you're the mayor.
Interesting.
So I went to this coffee, constituent, open meeting with Josh Brugger and Phil Kuyers
At Spring Lake Library. Okay. And we finish these. Yeah.
I know, right?
Right, go ahead.
We really are two J's in a pod.
I know.
And so they actually this was one of the topics that the audience wanted to talk about was the letterhead issue. And so I actually I tell this very same story. I don't usually get involved, but I said I only say that to say, is there any separation between the individual and the office holder when you are an elected official? And I would argue that there really isn't a separation there. Because you still hold that title, even if you choose to say, I'm just saying this as a private citizen. Are you a private citizen? If you're a public official, I don't think that you can coexist in those two spaces at the same time.
And besides, they also shared the letter on their official
because
pages for commissioners on social media.
There's this compromise.
Their Facebook pages.
There's this compromise floating around about, well, maybe we could do from the desk of. And I just thought, but you're still leveraging the title, so I don't even know why we're... I can understand that they're trying to find a middle ground, and I respect that they're just trying to kind of sort of mitigate how out of hand this might get.
Don't you feel they were treated with kid gloves, though? I felt like it.
Yes. I do think that is likely to change fairly soon.
It better.
Just based on the way that Kuyers and Brugger were talking to the constituents,
Yeah, what did they talk about last night?
Brugger said, well, we've tried a lot. He said this to this effect in, I think, Planning and Policy last week. He said, look, Commissioner Sylvia Rohde, when you come out of the gate saying that I have Trump derangement syndrome and you essentially call me names and make, judgments on me and then launch into whatever your supposed logical point is, I've already tuned you out because you've insulted me on the face, and now this is not polite or civil discourse. And we've tried to meet you in the middle, and we're trying to do what we can to be reasonable and, go along to get along and all that stuff. But we're kind of done. And so he did speak to that point to his constituents the other day, and he said, we're done. So I don't know exactly what that means.
Good.
But I am really looking forward to how the dynamics, the interactions are going to unfold next week.
I know. And Commissioner Jacob Bonema had, when he was talking about the letters, he was like, look, if you wanted to send that letter, but then you had to post it on social media so you could show everybody what you were doing.
Right.
And he's talking about that. And the whole time, Allison, she's mumbling under her breath. She makes these faces like you're in high school or something. You know, I wonder, does she ever go back and watch the meetings and watch? It's unbelievable.
Well,
to me.
there's two very distinct cliques that are
clearly
on the board right now. One is a little bit more juvenile than the other, but I will say that the other does exist. The traditional Republicans, or however you want to categorize them, they definitely also are kind of like, having quiet moments and
well, you're right. It does go both ways. You're right. I just have a tendency
it's less juvenile in terms of eye rolling and snarking. But it does happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just really noticed it at the last meeting. I thought, oh my gosh, is she actually going to talk over him or say something? She was just rolling her eyes.
Full disclosure, I have a personal flaw where I have a difficulty like maintaining my facial features. And I think you suffer from the same affliction. I can't wait till we go to video, Dirk, because people are going to be like, these ladies are crazy.
I can't sit still.
I
doodle.
When somebody says something just purely outrageous or nonsensical, especially like in a governmental context, I can't control my eyebrows. Like they will just shoot off my face.
Like RFK Jr?
I mean, maybe Commissioner Miedema suffers from the same affliction that I do.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, I mean, if I would have been, RFK Jr. I call him RFK Jr. It's RFK Jr. He said some very troubling things about autism yesterday, and if I would have been attending something like that or covering that, it would have been very hard for me.
Right.
I have friends who have children that are autistic. Their hearts are breaking right now.
Right.
This is
to blanket say that this is a whole category of people, like you're putting them all into one box, and look, autism is a spectrum, and there are varying degrees of functioning and abilities, and I think that that's really disappointing to see somebody that's in that position to basically write them off as useless.
It just made me really sad, and I just thought, where are you going with this? What are you even thinking? And sometimes we do talk about national news. We, just revisiting RFK Jr. and what he said about autism. I'm just going to say this.
Yep.
I think Governor Whitmer is too goofy to run for president. There, I said it.
You think because of the photo?
I just think there's been too many things where she's just goofy and doesn't do the right thing. And I don't know. I just feel that she's just not. She's not it.
I don't know. I guess it kind of depends on what the circumstances and what the vibe is. I mean, 4 years is a long ways away. Okay, so I don't know. Did you have a chance to read Stephen Smith's take?
Tell me about it.
Okay, so Stephen Smith, very famous sports commentator, weirdly getting involved in national political conversations on networks, which has been really interesting because he's not from this legacy space. So he's a little bit more of an outsider. He had what I felt was a pretty accurate take on this. And he said, look, she's doing what she has to do. When you're the governor of a state, and if you're in the opposing party of whoever the current administration is, you can't just do an end run around the president. You have to engage the president. You are the governor of a state. At the time that she met with Trump, we had the conversation of the tariffs going on. We weren't sure how it was going to affect the automobile industry.
Right.
We also had a natural disaster that was in northern Michigan, and I'm pretty sure that she was already trying to grease the wheel because she was planning to ask for emergency assistance in northern Michigan from that ice storm that we had. That was just it really was a disaster. So, politics is messy sometimes, and sometimes you got to eat a little crow in order to do what you need to do for your people. I will say that the photo op, not great optics.
Yeah, I know.
Again, going back to my my inability to control my facial features, I don't know what I would have done in that situation had I had a planned meeting with the president. I'm trying to advocate for my constituents. And then he kind of sabotaged her a little bit and started talking about a lot of outlandish stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that she probably knew that this was going to happen to some degree, but maybe she didn't realize how much this, to that extent it was going to happen. And maybe she just glitched. But I want to try to give her a little bit of the benefit of the doubt here. I'm not her number one fan, just so that you know. I'm not. There are some things that she's done and said where I'm like,
I just don't think she's it.
Not sure.
Maybe not this time around. I don't know.
But I also believe in not being in love with my political candidates.
Exactly.
I don't need to think that you're a hero.
I know, and you've said that before, and I
just need to know that you're the best option out of all the options.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, because you have said that before, and I said this to Rep. Scholten. Governor Whitmer extended executive orders. I was able to stay on Medicaid that I had from a job loss.
Right.
Then I got breast cancer, which in turn saved my life.
Right.
So, I have a lot of gratitude for Governor Whitmer in that respect. I just don't know if the time is right. We'll have to see. There was an event with Rep. Scholten's been everywhere.
I know.
She is really busy.
I know.
There was an event I wasn't able to attend. It was with women in business. What was that all about?
Yeah, it was very so in the description it says an intimate meeting, and by intimate it means like your elbows are literally touching your other people, and you're like, oh, hello. It was in this very small space. There was probably about a dozen female business owners, most of them based in the Grand Rapids and Kalamazoo area.
Yes.
They were talking about how various decisions by the administration are affecting their various pursuits, because they range from, I work in HR, I'm a consultant, I work in marketing, I'm in aerospace engineering. There were all sorts of different things that people brought to the table. Some people were first or second generation immigrants.
Okay.
And so all of the the topics that we've been seeing in the national space came up. Funny story.
Yeah.
I am sitting there and it's springtime, and I know that I have springtime seasonal allergies.
Oh, no.
And I did take a Claritin before I went, and I had a tissue in my pocket. Apparently at some point I had taken this tissue and I thought I put it in my pocket. It had been tucked under my leg.
Oh, no.
I sneeze and I am a faucet.
No.
It's instant and it's concerning.
Oh, no.
And I have my head down, and I'm not even thankfully I recorded it, because I am not paying attention to anything that's being said, because I'm like, somebody's going to see me. I have snot all over my face. I'm not wearing a long sleeve shirt. I'm trying to get the sleeve of my jacket, and I'm trying to wipe this away discreetly, because I was so worried that somebody was going to be like, "Are you okay?" It was horrifying. My face was beet red. I was like, I'm gonna die here. I'm gonna die of shame. And thankfully, no one let on that they saw. I'm sure that somebody saw me. It was awful. It went on for like 15 minutes, but it felt like an eternity.
That's the worst. Did you get to have lunch at least? I know they were serving lunch.
Yeah, but I think that was mostly for the participants. The media got water. At least they hydrated us and watered us like plants.
This is too funny.
No, they're very generous and very accommodating and nice. We did have a little mini presser afterward.
Okay.
One question that I asked as we were lingering is to your point, you've been kind of everywhere. And I kind of want to know, you're getting all this feedback, but realistically, how optimistic are you that this is going to go anywhere, or that you're going to be able to affect any kind of change with the feedback that you're bringing to
Great question. Yeah.
And, she said, well, we're in the minority, right? Yeah. I know that we're in the minority, but that doesn't mean that we stop trying. Can you imagine what if we just didn't do this? How much worse it would be. So I suppose that's the best answer that she can give, but at least she is doing it and making the donuts. So
I haven't covered any protests, but I do listen to Rachel Maddow. I listen to all kinds of different radio.
Yeah.
But I listen to Rachel Maddow on the way in.
It's almost like radio is your thing. Yeah.
Are these protests helping? What are your thoughts on that? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, this kind of touches on one point that that Scholten continues to highlight when she has her town hall. She says, when all of that funding was frozen, and it just sort of created chaos. There was a huge uproar from all of the spaces, and so then the administration backtracked, and the tariffs, and then there was huge uproar with this, and the layoffs, and there was huge uproar with this, and they backtracked. So she said, when you have reaction in mass, it does matter, and it does get them to either walk things back or water things down, or at least pause. So I think that the momentum of these protests, while we think that they're a little bit piecemeal, it might get mundane. I think that if you can continue to build on the momentum, it is possible that they could affect change.
Okay. That's good to know.
I was at the one in Lansing, that I sent the information in on. And
I'm still editing it.
Yes. Edited it way back. Here are the pictures.
Yeah.
Just give me the pictures.
But there is so much energy and anger, and you can just feel it, and that's building quite a coalition.
Yeah, and I would, to our point, when she had those back-to-back town halls in Grand Rapids and then in Grand Haven.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost to the point where, like, especially in Grand Rapids, the sentiment was they weren't satisfied with what her answers were because they want more.
They want more. Okay.
So if you have more people like that, then the power of the people and the voice of the people ultimately is what can affect change.
Well, and also the hand-drawn signs. I mean, there's a lot of impact there.
Yeah.
Because you see
they're so
exactly
creative,
where people
aren't
are.
they? Yeah, yes, what their issue is or what, what they feel most strongly about. I mean, I wish I had the creative mind for those kinds of things, but I really, mad respect to the sign game.
I got a couple of things I want to run by you, Sarah.
Yeah.
Because if I would have been able to make that event with Rep. Scholten, I would have asked her this.
Would you have given me a tissue?
Yes, I would have. I would have given you a tissue. I would have asked her this. I would have asked her if she has had any conversations with her colleagues about protecting the media. Because people are starting to get very scared. Now, I understand, we're doing a podcast here, but who's to say, right?
Right. It's not like Trump hasn't said it before about locking journalists up.
Yeah.
I mean, he said it during his first administration.
So I'm curious if she's had conversations about what to do about the media and where the media is. And that leads me to Megyn Kelly in this big interview she did with the New York Times, saying that the role of journalists have changed. We talked about this on our road trip, but we're going to do this on the podcast. And that she had said that it's okay for journalists to endorse candidates for president now because she did it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty self-serving.
It really is, isn't it?
She's I realize, the somewhat hypocrisy of me saying this because we're on a podcast. And so, obviously you want people to listen to your podcast, but that's her main gig now. And I mean, she's had a very complicated career history. And so now this is her bread and butter, and she wants to market to an audience to make money.
Exactly.
You have to, again, like what I teach and when people ask me about media literacy, you have to think about where the message is coming from. And you have to think about who owns the whatever media you're listening to or consuming, and what platform it's on, how they're phrasing things, who their sponsors are, who their advertisers are.
Right.
All of that stuff makes a difference. Yeah. And so I think that, I'm not surprised that she would say that, because that gives her a lot of attention, and the politicians now will court her for her endorsement because they know that she leverages an audience behind her.
There you go. And I've never once stated on the radio where I fall politically.
Oh, yeah. When I was at the Senate, we never once endorsed anything.
I'm all over the place. So people assume they know something about you. It's just so interesting. And it's like, you might be surprised. But anyway, I just thought that was interesting that she had stated that. And I thought, oh, gosh. But, you and I did that road trip to Cleveland. We weren't there all that long. But it is nice to see young adults being interested in journalism.
Yeah, we had a lot of people in our podcast
We actually
session,
did. I was surprised by that.
Right.
What did you learn from that?
Well, it was kind of cool to listen to snippets of some of the other podcasts.
Yeah.
There was a true crime podcast that was really interesting. There's a sort more of like a talk radio style podcast by ML Elric in Detroit. It was kind of cool to kind of hear like how they got into it and like what they want out of it, because it's kind of all over the board. And we learned about some resources that we might be able to pursue in order to, get onto bigger platforms.
Right. Yeah. I thought it was good. I really thought it was good. I know that our podcast, that what we do here, I'm not as buttoned up as other ones.
Unscripted. We're definitely
because
unscripted.
I'm buttoned up Monday through Friday from 6 to 10. I'm giving time checks. I'm doing this. Why? I don't want to do that on a pod. I don't need to be. I'm Mary Ellen Murphy. Now we're going to talk about. Why would I do that? I do that Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
So I like it.
I like
this.
the free form version of this because it's conversational. It's organic. We might agree on a list of topics to hit on.
Oh yeah, we talk about that.
We don't have any pre-conversations about what we're going to say.
Hey, you were in Grand Rapids earlier this morning with Shelley Irwin.
I was on live radio and I didn't know that until 3 minutes before I went on.
She's at.
I said, "Are we live?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I go,
WGBU.
"Oh."
Yeah. That's a nice. That's a nice facility, isn't it?
It really
Our
is.
Engineer here, he's the engineer over there.
Yeah.
So we're very lucky, by the way. But yeah, that's a nice facility over there.
Yeah. And it was really cool. And again, to your point just a moment ago, it's super structured, right?
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, I'm thinking about all the enunciated pauses that I'm saying because I know that this is live and I don't want to sound like a complete idiot. So I'm trying to reduce my ums and my likes and my
I know. Yeah.
So it was really cool. It was cool.
Awesome. I haven't seen the agenda yet for the meeting on Tuesday on the 22nd. What do you know?
As far as I know, I think that we're probably going to see that discussion on that one rule about the call to question. This is why I think that the majority is going to kind of draw a little bit of a line in the sand. Everyone's like, well, that's a kind of an obscure rule. Well, the call to question is a rule that is in the bylaws where, let's say a conversation is going on way too long and somebody's sort of monopolizing the floor and waxing poetic, and you're getting way off topic. We've seen that happen in lots of different meetings.
Sure.
So what happens is somebody says call to question. Now that's supposed to be a mechanism where the board immediately votes on whether or not to just stop all conversation, and we're going to vote on the thing that's in front of us. Like we're wrapping this up. Now the current rule is written where you need a 2/3 majority of the board in order to force the vote on the topic that we want to end the discussion. We want to move on. We want to go to the next thing. If you don't get meet that threshold, then conversation continues. So what I think is in store is that they want to change this from 2/3 majority to a simple majority. Now, that is a little bit controversial because I know that the Ottawa Impact Commissioners are immediately going to criticize the board leadership because they're saying you're cutting off our voice. You're gonna, you have the majority, so you can do this anytime. Don't tread on me, like all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's true, but I mean, I don't know any alternatives because do we have 10-hour meetings or do we just get through the business of the county? You get a couple of your points in, and then we all move on. But the way that they're kind of staying relevant to their base is that they're trying to monopolize that time as much as possible and really focus on some of those wedge issues that differentiates them from the rest of the majority.
Sure.
So we'll see how that unfolds. But I'm anticipating that this very simple bureaucratic decision could really open up a Pandora's box of conversation on Tuesday.
Why is the Easter Bunny so scary? Every photo I have with my kids, their faces are red. They're screaming and bawling their heads off.
I have a fantastic story. Okay. I was like 9 years old, and I was staying overnight at my grandparents' house for Easter. And I woke up that morning, beautiful spring day. I went out on the front porch, and I thought I saw blood all over the porch. And my grandpa said he had shot the Easter Bunny. And it turned out to be ketchup. And he thought it was hilarious. I am just traumatized. My grandma did not know that he had done this because he had snuck out in the middle of the night to do it. And she was like, oh, for God's sake, Joseph, why would you do that? And people wonder why I'm weird.
Oh my gosh.
This is me.
I don't know what to say.
He also made me think I was Polish for 6 years.
What?
When I'm not. We'll get into that in another day.
Boy, let me just say, after that little road trip, I'm so happy I live in West Michigan. I love
know.
my family.
I know.
I love the grit and the drive and the hustle of a Metro Detroit life.
And Cleveland was a really cool city.
Oh, yeah, I
It's
wish
too
we
bad
could have stayed.
I mean, they have they have this
Dang.
theater district,
I
and I was
know.
like, this is lit. All right.
I know.
Yeah.
But Metro Detroit's a concrete jungle. Here's what I say. Next year, spring break, you and we should try to find some sort of journalism thing we can go to or something.
Let's
I don't
hit
know.
Cleveland again. That's
All right.
Yeah.
We're good.